Matt DiBenedetto says anything's on the table when it comes to his 2022 NASCAR plans, and Ware Racing says the goal is to have 1 or 2 competitive cars next year. So what are they going to do with those extra charters? How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. We have a couple things to touch on today from this past weekend. In yesterday's video, I focused on Ty Gibbs because he was coming off yet another Xfinity Series win, but today we've got to catch up on some very interesting nuggets from this past weekend. But before we get to that, I want to begin this episode by discussing some very sad news from yesterday. Yesterday, Indianapolis Motor Speedway confirmed that Bob Jenkins, a legendary NASCAR and IndyCar broadcaster, has passed away at the age of 73. Longtime motorsports commentator on ESPN and ABC, he was a big part of NASCAR's meteoric rise through the 80s and especially the 90s. He had revealed earlier this year, back in February, that he'd been diagnosed with brain cancer and was undergoing treatment. So very sad news indeed to find out yesterday that we have lost Bob Jenkins, a legend. I only had the chance to meet him once and I was honored to get to work with him on an iRacing event last year. Truly an icon of American motorsports who will be dearly missed by many. So I just wanted to mention that here at the top of the show. Of course, thoughts go out to all of his friends and family, wishing them the absolute best. Now we do have some news to get to from this past weekend, a couple of clips, a couple of interesting sound bites that dropped Sunday. I want to begin by talking about Ware Racing because actually this story is over a week old. It was over a week ago that Ware went on SiriusXM NASCAR radio and said that the team's goal was to have a couple more competitive cars in 2022.
My dream and my goal is to step everything up to the next level, both, competition-wise, technology-wise. We're kind of 1 year behind where we thought we were going to be, but we're trying to have 2 really strong cars for next year. That is our goal.
I didn't make too much of those comments when he first said them because what does he really mean? What's his definition of competitive? I know the next gen car is going to even the playing field in some aspects, but there's no way Ware Racing is going to go out and contend for a championship next year. That's just not happening. So what exactly does he mean by more competitive? Maybe top 25 in points? That'd be a clear step forward. But again, I'm not sure what to make of it. The field from about 10th or 12th place on back to like 25th or 30th is becoming very, very crowded and actually very, very competitive. I think still today and probably next year, even with the next gen, there really are only 3 or 4, maybe 5 teams that can actually contend for the championship. I'm talking about Joe Gibbs, Penske, Hendrick Motorsports, and maybe SHR, although this year they've taken a big step back. I don't know what's happening. But that next tier of race teams, the Chip Ganassys, who of course are going away next year, the Richard Childress Racings, the track houses, it could maybe even throw Roush in there, 2311s in that range. That area of the field is becoming very, very competitive next year with 2311 planning to expand, Trackhouse obviously expanding, GMS Racing hoping to get involved. I'm sure they'll get some Chevy support. So when Ware talks about elevating his team's performance, I just don't know what that actually looks like. But this past weekend, his son Cody Ware, talking to fellow YouTuber David Land, doing a good job out there in Nashville, he discussed Ware Racing's 2022 plans in a little more detail, and I thought this was very, very interesting.
We're committed to building the brand and continuing to race in various forms of motorsport, as well as stepping up our Cup program next year. So I think we'll probably be going down to 1 or 2 cars for next year in the Cup Series. That way we can not just expand, but also improve what we're already doing. So I think slowly but surely we're doing that, showing people that we're trying to make the best of what we have, but also improve and put our money where our mouth is and get better through the coming years.
So Cody Ware says right there that RWR will likely only field 1 or 2 Cup Series teams next year. That's pretty big news because right now Ware Racing has control of 4 charters, or they're using 4 charters. They share one of them with Richard Petty. I'm not entirely sure how that partnership works, but regardless, it sounds like, based on what Cody Ware is saying, that Ware Racing will only use 1 or 2 charters next year. So what will become of those other 2 charters? That sounds to me like they are for sale or perhaps have already been sold to one of those new teams I mentioned earlier. We know 2311 Racing with Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin, they are looking for a second charter. Could this be where they get it from? Could they already have a deal in place? We know now that Ross Chastain will drive for Trackhouse, which leads me to believe that Kurt Busch knows for sure what's going on with 2311. Maybe that's already a done deal, just pending an official announcement. So if we try to make some inferences here, perhaps 2311 Racing will be buying one of Rick Ware Racing's charters for next year, and that's what Kurt Busch will use to race for that team next season. Now there's that weird Petty Ware charter that might also be for sale. Could a team like GMS or maybe even Dale Jr., although it sounds like they're not planning to go Cup racing next year, could they be in the market, in the running, bidding for that one? Shoot, I wouldn't rule out Trackhouse at this point bidding on another charter. They're crazy over there. But anyway, those words from Cody Ware make it sound like Rick Ware Racing will not only be taking up as many entry list spots, but they'll also be perhaps a little more competitive next year than they've been the last several, which I think pretty much every NASCAR fan in existence can celebrate and rejoice if that does in fact end up being the case. We don't know for sure what the fate of those additional Rick Ware Racing charters will be. Maybe they hold on to them and end up just leasing them out to 2311 for a year or something like that. Like, you never really know. But regardless, if Rick Ware Racing is in fact more competitive, even just a little more competitive next year, and another competitive team maybe lands one or two of their charters, that's good for the health, that's good for the competitiveness of the NASCAR Cup Series, which I think in turn will make the viewing experience from home more fun for the fans. So pretty interesting. Can't wait to hear what gets confirmed and what doesn't in the coming months. But there you have it. Rick Ware Racing hopes to be a little more competitive next year, even if their fleet is slightly reduced. Now, there was another silly season related quote from this past Sunday. Matt DiBenedetto, who is still currently without a ride for 2022, now that we know Harrison Burton will drive the 21 car next year, with Austin Cindric taking over the 2 from Brad Keselowski, who's going to Roush. Goodness, these musical chairs are getting more and more complicated. But now that we know Matt DiBenedetto does not have a set ride for next season, his future is very much up in the air. Well, he told Davey Siegel this weekend that he will entertain anything for next year, including the Xfinity Series. He had previously mentioned he would only want to stay in Cup, but clarified. Big smile from Matt DiBenedetto. Love that positive attitude. So this is new, because last month when he posted that 10-minute video to Facebook of him talking about his frustrations with this season and how next season was now a big unknown, he said in that video that he wants to stay in Cup. He believes he's a Cup Series driver. He knows he can win in Cup. That's the goal. And that makes sense. Once you get a taste of the Cup Series, once you get a taste of, he was a NASCAR playoff driver last year in the Cup Series, you feel like you belong in the NASCAR Cup Series. I completely get that. But unfortunately, reality has once again slapped Matt DiBenedetto across the face, because the truth is there just may not be any decent Cup Series opportunities out there for him. A lot of those silly season dominoes I mentioned earlier have fallen into place, so time is running out for Matt DiBenedetto. And I said it a few weeks ago when he initially released that video that, he shouldn't limit himself to Cup Series and Cup Series only. He should be having conversations with decent Xfinity Series teams and maybe even some Truck Series teams. He could pull a John Hunter and go down to trucks and dominate. There are a lot of unknowns as far as what Xfinity rides may or may not be available. I think it's safe to assume that maybe there'll be a colleague seat possibly open, JGR maybe, but probably not. I don't see that one happening, but they did take Daniel Hemrick last year. I did not expect that either, so who knows? But the point is, it's important if you're Matt DiBenedetto at this point to kind of just accept that anything is possible. You gotta cast a wide net right now, because this is the thing about Matt DiBenedetto. He's a very solid driver. I don't think he's a great driver or anything like that, but I think he's a very solid, he is a Cup Series driver, but unfortunately, he does not have much funding behind him. He doesn't seem to have wealthy family money behind him. He doesn't seem to have any close relationships with major corporate sponsors. So that combination, unfortunately, decent driver, but with no money, often does not land you a good opportunity in NASCAR. Certainly makes it tough to find a good NASCAR Cup Series opportunity. So I think this is smart for Matt DiBenedetto to clarify. Hopefully he's having discussions with some Xfinity Series or even maybe some Truck Series teams, because I don't think there's any shame in Matt DiBenedetto going down to the Xfinity Series next year and competing for a championship there. There really isn't. I don't think there's any shame in that whatsoever, and it might work out for him. It might revitalize his image, his brand. It might not. It could fail. He could falter and eventually fade into obscurity, perhaps, but it might pan out. I feel like it could go one of two ways. He could go down to Trucks or Xfinity, and it could be like John Hunter Nemechek this year, who was a Cup rookie last year, didn't go that well, went to Trucks, went to KBM. He's won 5 out of 15 races this year. Everyone's talking about him. He's collecting trophies. John Hunter Nemechek definitely has a future in NASCAR. I could see him moving back up into a more competitive Cup Series seat in the next few years. Or if Matt DiBenedetto goes down to Trucks or Xfinity, it might look a little more like Daniel Hemrick recently, who's also recently made a similar move. He went from being a rookie in the Cup Series, was kind of average, went down to Xfinity now with Joe Gibbs Racing, where unfortunately he has still not won a race. He's been very solid, very consistent, and he maybe should have won that race at Atlanta until Kyle Busch nudged judged him just in the wrong way. But the point is, he has still not won a race, and I feel like in general the hype, the momentum behind Daniel Hemrick is not what it once was. He does seem to have some decent sponsorships, some decent partners down there that are keeping him in that seat, but I don't think anyone's that excited about Daniel Hemrick's possible return to the NASCAR Cup Series. So if you're Matt DiBenedetto and you go down to Xfinity or Trucks, it could work out either way. You know, Matt DiBenedetto, it's worth noting, is 30 years old, which is actually the same age roughly that Daniel Hemrick is. I think one thing working in John Hunter Nemechek's favor is that he's only 24 years old. He's still considered to be pretty young. I mean, he's still young for a NASCAR driver, so he has many years ahead of him. So Matt DiBenedetto's age may work against him in that case, but here's the thing. If his only options are run for Spire part-time, or Rick Ware Racing part-time in Cup, or go down to Xfinity and maybe race for Call League there, maybe land a spot for a contender, or go down to Trucks and land a spot for a contender, I would pick the Xfinity or Truck Series option all the way. I think you go next year where you have the best shot at winning a race. Win something, Matt DiBenedetto. Win anything at this point. I want to see Matt DiBenedetto win a race next year. I don't care the series. I don't care the track. I don't care what team he drives for. He needs to go somewhere next year where he can run up front, he can win races, collect trophies, do the hat dance in victory lane, and possibly land the attention of a major sponsor, and then maybe in the next couple of years once again pursue a Cup Series career. Don't limit your options, swallow your pride a little bit. I'm sure there's a decent Xfinity or Truck Series team out there that would love to bring Matt DiBenedetto on for next season. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but I certainly think it's too optimistic to consider him a front runner for any Cup Series rides at this point. So I'm glad to hear that he's broadened his scope a little bit. We'll see where Matt DiBenedetto lands next year. I know there's a lot of Matty D fans out there who are worried about his NASCAR future. I like what I'm hearing though from DiBenedetto. He's open to any and all possibilities. That's the right mindset to have. Where do you think Matt DiBenedetto lands next year? Do you think he stays in Cup? Do you think he lands a ride somewhere? Or do you think it's more likely he ends up in Xfinity or Trucks for maybe a championship contending organization? Leave your comments down below. I look forward to reading them. Thank you so much for watching. As always, be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for more NASCAR news, rumors, commentary, things like that. And as always, a thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters as well. Couldn't do this show without your tremendous support every single month. We'll be live tomorrow night on this channel at 8 p.m. Eastern Time to recap all the news this week, this past weekend's races at Watkins Glen. We'll have Carson Hocevar, NASCAR Truck Series playoff driver, on the show as well. Can't wait for that. I will see you all then. Have a fantastic rest of your day.